Welcome to this second video about Annihilate the Alekhine 4-pawns attack for white. In the first video, we looked at the main line with bishop f5, and we also explored the introduction. And there's a variation in the introduction which explains how to avoid black undermining the center. In this video, I'm going to focus on the key variations without bishop f5, chapter 3, and the early deviations. So let's go to the variations. And as you know, we're using Rapid and Classical 1600 to 2500 to select and prioritize the variations. So for club players, it's easy to learn, and what they learn, they are most likely to get over the board and online. So key variations without bishop f5. So the first moves, right, in this line are still the same. Here we get the signature 4 pawns, but no capture on e5 and then knight c6, bishop f5, but immediate g6. White continues knight c3, so we develop our pieces on the queen side first, and now we are having a critical position. So no knight f3, but bishop e3. Why not knight f3? Because black can immediately start undermining white's center. So this is a critical position number 6, just to reiterate the point, and that you practice it in multiple ways. So after bishop e3, you see that in 63% of the cases, black castles short. But after black castles short, white wins with the move c5, only played in 16% of the cases by white. You can see here white wins 78% of the games, and the expected score is over 80%, including the draws. Why is this so strong? Okay, let's continue. Castle. So we play c5. And after c5, right, there are two moves. They don't make much difference. D takes c5 and knight d7. But d takes c5, d takes c5. The knight on b6 is under attack. The knight goes away. Knight d5 is not available because it was attacked by the knight on c3 and the queen on d1. And now h4. And in this position, white is winning. So this is a very strong attack, right? So after h5, for instance, white can play queen c2, bishop c4, right, with a pin on the pawn on f7, castle long or rook d1, and then continue their attack with g4 and crush the opponent. So this is a very common mistake. And just to go back, right, in the tree a little bit. So here we have this situation, and if black tries to, like you can see, 48%, black first trades here. And this is a tactic. This is not a trainable, but you can see here, of course, 2 pawns are undefended. Knight is coming to d5. Only 1 pawn can be defended, but we take the knight, and now we actually win a piece. So going back to this position, knight d7, right? We saw h4 with a crushing attack. Queen d1, we have a tactic that ended up with winning a piece. So, and we had, of course, in this position c5. You can say what happens if black plays immediately d7. The theme is the same, h4. And this is +2 for white, similar to what we saw before. So this is very strong. So let's go back up in the tree. So castling was a mistake by black. And the strongest move here is bishop e6. The pawn on c4 is twice attacked. So we defend it with b3. Right, and you can see here 76% castle. Okay, now we just develop our pieces. Take. c5, right? So black gets their undermining move in. But we just push. We attack the pawn on e6 and the pawn on c5 is under attack. Black has an intermediate move, attacking the knight. We defend, the bishop goes away. We attack the bishop on e5 with the knight. The bishop goes away and we take. And white is again +2 with central control by the pawns on c4 and d5. So let's go back in the tree. So we were here before, right? So we go now back to this position. So after f4, right, g6 recovered, but of course black can first exchange here, and now we have a couple of moves. You can see knight c6, 60% of the cases, 18% for bishop f5 and c5 is a move. So let's go to knight c6. Pawn on d4 is under attack. We cannot push because we lose the pawn on e5. So bishop e3, again, no knight f3 because of bishop g4. And now, of course, if now in this case, white plays bishop f5, we get transposition. So we have to look at other moves in this position, right? Because bishop f5, knight c3, then e6, knight f3, and then we're in the main line that we discussed before, but we're looking at lines without bishop f5. So we have 7% here for g6 and 3% for e6. Let's look at this move, g6, bishop e2, bishop g7, knight f3, bishop g4. In this case, we are not afraid for the pin. And we play knight d2, so we can take back with the knight on f3 if we want to, or we can place the knight to e4, and we're defending also the pawn on c4 with the knight on d2. So the knight is very flexible. But we are immediately activating the knight to e4, and after a capture on f3, white is much better, and with the bishop pair and still with the control over the center. And black has not been able to question the center, and white is +2. So let's go back to where we were. So we were here, and then we were discussing knight c6, bishop e3, e6. I mean, it's only 3%, but still 1,200 games. So let's have a quick look. e6. Now we defend because the bishop can no longer pin. Bishop e4, knight d2, again, it's the more flexible move. And then castle, bishop d3, and black already has to start to be careful because after knight e7 there is the Greek gift, which is a tactic in the position in the course. But of course black can try to open the center like this by playing f6, but we just take. A rook takes f6 is not possible because of bishop g5. So black captures like this, and white again has a winning position, because what we learned in the first video, that black really needs this this bishop on f5 to have proper control over the position, and of course the pawns in front of the black king have been damaged too. So that's not really an improvement. In general, e6, we will also see that in the early deviations, locking in the bishop on c8 is a bad idea. So in this position, after e takes d5, let's have a look at So knight c6, bishop f5 we covered in the previous video. Let's look at c5, right? So we push, and now you can see e6 is most played, e6, right? And now the threat is queen h4, check. And then the king is under attack, and if we play g3, there would be queen e4 with a double attack on the rook on h1 and the king on e1. And the pawn on d5 is under attack, so we have to play knight c3 to get rid of both attacks. c4 with this threat of bishop b4, and then the pawn on d5 would be hard to defend. So we play d6, so bishop b4 is not possible. Knight c6, attacking the pawn on e5. We defend it. Black is attacking the defender and also makes bishop g7 possible. But we play knight e4. What a beautiful move. So we're kind of not taking into account the threat. This, and now we have a double attack. We threaten a knight f6, and we threaten a bishop takes g5. Right, and knight f6, you can see e7 is being covered by the pawn on d6. So black is forced to give up their queen after this. So this is how it most of the times continues. And white has a queen for 2 minus and a pawn, and is winning. So spectacular move, right? So after c5, d5, e6 to undermine, knight c3 to protect and defend both, and then after d6, knight c6, bishop f4, g5, no bishop g3, but knight e4. Beautiful move, exclamation mark. Yes. So we go back to c5, d5, and now you can see in 25% of the cases g6 is being played. Knight c3, bishop g7, again no knight f3, because then there would be bishop g4s. So we play bishop f4 to avoid this spin, and undermine, push, attack the pawn one more time. Now there's no pin by bishop g4, so we can play the knight. Knight d7, adding an attacker to the pawn. We defend, 3 times defended, 3 times under attack, and now black wants to break with f6, and we allow the pawn capture here, because now after bishop g5, black has weakened their position so much with isolated pawns on e6 and e5, and look also at these pieces. They will not be coming into the game. And also the king position has been weakened. For instance, right after queen a5, we play bishop h6, and we start attacking the black king. And after trading, we have ideas with knight g5. And black has no counterplay to protect their pawns and at the same time develop their pieces. So black is actually lost in this position. So let's back up. We are recovering, right? We were in this position and we had 3 moves. We covered knight c6, bishop f5 in the previous video, c5 we just looked at. So there is, of course, still this g6 move. Let's see what is here different. So here, why we included this, right? It's like in only, so to prevent c5 by black, we are playing it ourselves. So this is a critical position, and that's why, despite the fact it's only in 4% of the games, we included it here. And after knight d5, bishop c4. Let's look at this position. All right, white has complete control over the center. Black has not been able to question it with the pawn break c5 because we played it timely. And in this position, white is +2. So that concludes the key variations without bishop f5. Let's go to the early deviations. So e4, knight f6, e5, knight d5, d4, right? So now we have 3 lines. Okay, so there is, of course, d6 is the main, but we have here left e6, knight c6, and knight b6, right? So let's go to the easy ones first. So we're going to cover first knight c6 and knight b6, knight c6, because we have here kind of a nice idea, c4, kicking, and now you can see, right, c4, knight b6. We play only in 10% of the games this is being played, but you can see it scores really well with 60%, d5, attacking this knight. Well, in 93% of the cases, this knight takes, and then we push again, c5, and in 80% of the cases, black goes here, and now white wins a piece with queen d4. So this is a nice refutation, and white is winning a piece in 7 moves. After knight c6, we just continue to chase them, but you can see, right, in this position, d5 is only played in 10% of the games. So it's good to know this, right? Good to know the refutation and have an information advantage versus black. So let's go to knight b6. So the interesting part is, like, I mean, the knight has not been challenged yet by c4. The knight volunteers. So now we can play a4. And again, right, if you look at this whole position, it's only played in 2% of the games, but this was a recommendation by Graham Jones. So a4, right, the threat is of course a5. So if black does nothing, right, I mean, you can see in 44% of the cases, black plays a5, but if black does nothing, then we push, and we get this position, and we're just much better, right? I mean, black has not been able to control the position. But if black plays a5 to prevent a5 by white, the square b5 has been weakened, and we just continue our development. But you can see here, right, we have this bishop b5 check, and here white is better. You might ask what happens, right, if black takes on f3 and then wins the pawn. Well, white gets such a lead in development that this is a completely winning position for white. So black cannot afford themselves to take on f3 and then on d4 because the lead in development is too big for white. So that covered knight c6 and knight b6. So we have one variation left, right, after d4, which is the move e6. But, right, this looks, of course, already really bad because the bishop on c8 has been locked in, cannot develop on a natural basis. So how do we continue? We push. No surprise here. And here we can see, I mean, there are many moves, right? D5, let's look at that first, right? We push. So B4, B6, A3, right? We are completely stable here. And in this position, white is much better. So black is not able to question the center. So let's go up in the line. right? So we were just looking at e6 and c4, knight b6, knight c3. So here, right, we had the line d5, but there's also a bishop b4. And now it's critical position again, right, in only 7% of the cases. And that's why we made this a critical position in tactics and critical positions. Queen g4 has been played, right? So this bishop leaves the defense of the pawn on g7, and we immediately question this pawn. And right, I mean, after castle, of course, there's bishop h6, and we are winning at least an exchange. So this is, you could say, an inaccuracy, but you have to know this move. So after knight c3, we looked at d5, we looked at bishop b4, let's look at d6. Right, and you can see here, okay, bishop b4. Again, we have queen g4. And after g6, knight f3. White is much better. Look at all the weak squares here. And this bishop is really a bad bishop because it looks to the pawn on e6. So I think we have one line left, right? So after knight c3, there's still here c5. So let's have a look at that. We take. So it's kind of surprising. We don't push, we take. And yes, we play knight e6, win the bishop, and again end up with a much better position. I mean, you can see there are only a few games, and white scores extremely well. So I hope you enjoyed this second video about the key variations without bishop f5 and the early deviations, that you have seen how to avoid black being able to undermine the center. I hope also that you saw that many times we play moves that are not often played. So we found some very interesting moves that immediately win the game, and that in only 25 variations, and then supported by these tactics and critical moves that reinforce it. I hope this video will also help you remember it. I'm curious to hear what you think about the course. I'd like to thank you for joining, and I hope you really enjoy the course. Thank you.